All right, so we're going to look at chapter 2, but we're going to expand upon it. We're going to look at how to do internet research, at least for this class, uh, using our library and some external resources. Um, so I usually, so Dr. Sittler, he's going to talk about basically using the library resources. But I'm going to tell you how I personally do research. And the first place I normally go is Google Scholar. So you don't need a Google account or anything like that, although it does help if you want to email some articles to yourself or something like that. So you can either go just to Google and type in Google Scholar, or you could type in scholargoogle.com. Either way, you'll get there. It's also under some of the options, but you have to scroll a lot, so it's easier to actually type it. Okay, so when we look at some of the topics, most of you are going to have a topic that you have to research what the problem is and statistics on it and how many people does it affect and what's their ages and how does it affect them and what's the severity. So you kind of have to research the issue. And maybe it's two different issues. Maybe it's people who suffer from OCD and have issues with addiction with social media. So you might actually be doing research on multiple topics. And you're going to look at the history of it. You're going to look at what the issue is, what the severity is, how, the statistics. But the second part of your research is what's been done in counseling, psychology, social work, education, whatever related fields that helps individuals. And you're going to look up what has helped individuals therapeutically. I'll use that example with OCD. And you also have to look up what has helped individuals with social media addiction or internet addiction. And then you kind of have to look at what are symptoms or criteria that fit both categories. So what's the crossover? And, one of the things might be how many times do you check your phone? Okay. So that might cross over with obsession and compulsions if it's extremely high. So I think the key is looking these things up separately because maybe there's no research that combines them. That's probably a pretty new topic. And it's probably a pretty low percentage of our overall population. So it's harder to do research on that. So you kind of have to research each one separately and find out what's the crossover that would help both populations. Because if you find that, you'll find something that will help the combined population. So it's kind of a workaround. If you're dealing with combined topics, you kind of have to look them up separately and then combine them yourself. Because you want research that has success rate for each one and the symptomology that crosses over. Okay, so the first place I go is Google Scholar. It seems to be a little more comprehensive in some ways, but it also has some other tools that can definitely be of benefit. So I'm just going to use myself as an example because I know what's going to pop up on the screen, basically. so I can navigate it more quickly. I'm not guessing. Okay, so I'm just going to look up the topic of, let's say, I think people have regrets, and maybe I want to help people who have regrets and death anxiety. So I could type the words in separately, and it'll look up each one separately and combine them. But maybe I don't want a lot of results with them separate. Maybe I want them to actually have both. So I can do what's called a Boolean search. I can add modifiers. So if I type in and I put this phrase in quotations, it's going to say, okay, I'm only looking for the phrase death anxiety. I'm not looking for those words separately. It's also going to say, oh, it also has to have regret in it because there's an and there. Okay, so let's see if it works or not. All right, it did work. Look, there I am. All right, so when we look at this in Google Scholar, once we hit enter, we can modify some of these ranges. So for this class, most people who teach research, they only want you to include like articles that are like 10 years old or something like that. But that's not realistic because a lot of theories are much older than 10 years old. So, you know, I usually don't include a year unless I want to include something like the pandemic. And then I'll type in the year before the pandemic to now. And that'll give us a more accurate idea. So if you do have some specific thing that's time related, go ahead and include that. You can sort by relevance, you can sort by date, you can include citations, you don't want to include patents. Okay, so let's say you find some articles and let's click on one. Okay, so you can look at the abstract, you can cite the article, it gives you all different types of citations. So you can do APA, Chicago, Harvard. APA, don't just copy that whole thing. It may be correct, it may not. It usually comes close, okay? But don't just assume that it does. Okay, you can oftentimes download the article. And if you can't download it through Google Scholar, then all you have to do is copy the title and the author, paste it into our library search, and either you'll be able to download it from our library, or you'll be able to download it from, or they can get it through interlibrary loan. So you'll be able to get it. Okay, so here it says get full text at Penn West. Okay, that's because I'm logged into Penn West. But you can get the whole text. It knows Penn West has a subscription to like EBSCOhost and Scikit, things like that. So a lot of these, most of them, if you're logged on to Penn West, you can get the full text. If not, you can go to library and get it. Either way, it's free. Okay, so here's why I use Google Scholar. Because they have these other tools. So let's say you download the article, you read it, you love it. Wow, this is the perfect article. Okay. So let that do your work for you. If you think the article really touches upon the subject that you want to talk about, you can first look at uh, the article and go to their references. Okay. Uh, they've already done research on that topic, at least up until this article, 1996. This is this book 2000. This is 2007. So you can look at uh, what year it was published. And you know, if you look at their references, they've done the research up to that year for you. And usually if it's published, it's pretty extensive research. So look at their references. See which ones you'd like to read for your research. The next thing is you can look up who cited this article, and that takes you up to the present day. So you look in the article's reference for before it, that's where they got a lot of their research. You click on who cited it, so 376 publications cited it, or let's say 348 publications cited this article. Here you can see a list of all the publications that cited this article up to the present day, and that gets you the most recent research that at least looked at that article and incorporated it. So the next thing you can do is you can look up related articles. So this is like really a nice tool. And I think that it does a lot of the work for you. The other thing you can do, it has the author's names here. And if they're underlined, you can go to their page. So I would say at least half the authors have a page. You can look up everything that they published. Okay, so for instance, these are all of my publications, and you can show more. And okay, so this will group them first by the most cited publication. So 348, 213, 109. You could also do it by year, and it regroups them. And the interesting thing is, if people have been around for a long time, publishing on something, they might have slightly changed their topics. You know, it could be totally different, could be the Salem witch trials and new theories on causation, like ergo. But it could also, you know, go into things like psychological coping mechanisms for terrorist attacks. So, you know, that has a lot to do with death anxiety, but it's slightly different. It applies it to a specific topic, like terrorism. Then you might have come up with something just on regrets. You know, so it might apply it to a specific population, like college students. So you can look at it that way. You could also look at basically how many citations by publication per year, which is kind of interesting. Up here, they have topics they're interested in. So we looked up death anxiety, but maybe they're also interested in other things like existentialism, and you can click on that. Here's something that's kind of neat. There's been times when I not only wanted to quote somebody, which I don't have to get their permission for, but I might want to include a graph or a table in one of my publications. And usually they include an email So I've actually emailed the author and asked for permission to include something. So you can actually talk with the authors. You can follow them. It'll let you know whenever they publish something new. You can look at their co-authors. So there's a lot of interesting things that you could do with Google Scholar. All right, so let's say you found all the articles that you want, but let's say one of them is a book, okay? And you can't download a book from Google Scholar, okay? But you can request it from the library. It even says you can get the full text from Penn West. So there's a lot of different things that you can do. All right, the second place I go, and this might sound strange to you, I go to Amazon, all right? So let's say I like that author, and the reason I go to Amazon is not just to buy their books, but if I'm an author, do you think I'm going to send a book to the library first or Amazon? I'm going to send it to Amazon because I want to sell it. So Amazon usually gets the newest publications. So you can type in the author's name and see what comes up. All right. So this is usually all the books that they've published. And so this is, I know, is an older book, but you know, if you go up and okay, that looks like Existentialism and Death Attitudes. That would probably be one that I'm looking for. It's got other subjects too, like career development and stuff like that. But in reality, you know, you would be able to find a lot of these texts, and sometimes you can find them really cheap. You know, so here's one, 1999. So some of them are bargains sometimes. And if you want to keep the book, you can buy it used or discounted fairly easily. So that's where I usually look for books to see what's new. So the last thing I want to show you with this is my Penn West. And I just kind of want to give you the updated tour since integrating into Penn West, all of our library systems are in one place online. And it's University Libraries at My Penn West. So we go there. And one search is a general search. It searches everything. So we can type in the same thing. Regret. And you can still use a Boolean search for it. And it'll come up with a lot of things. But if you notice, it's very different than what we found on Google Scholar, which is not a bad thing. You might find something different. It also did not find as much. But, you know, I think that, you know, that's why I start with Google Scholar and then Amazon and then the library search. You can also sign into the account, you can download it and save it. I usually email, if it gives me the full text, I'll email that to myself, which you can do. So get PDF, read online, full text available, or you can go to Interlibrary Lab. So I usually use advanced search because This gives you Boolean terms. You don't have to memorize them all, and it adds them automatically. So you can say, well, what material type? Okay, do you want everything, books, articles, journals, videos? You know, it gives you dissertations. That's a nice one, especially if it's a contemporary topic. So if we go articles, okay, and you can go by fields, you can go by subject, okay, and you want to say, well, it contains this exact phrase or starts with. You can use and or not. You don't want it to include something. You can have fields. So if we go by subject, I want it to contain the word regret. And I want it to contain the subject, death, and anxiety. Okay, this will give you, when do you want it to start? When do you want it to end its search? Do you want it in English? And then we'll do a search. Now, you can actually choose what type of journals you want it to search. So you could do PsycInfo, you can do EBSCOhost. Those are the two big ones for our profession. Or you can have it look at all of them. Ryan can also help you with this. If you're having trouble using, here you can go show only scholarly peer-reviewed journals. Most of them from the library are peer-reviewed. So you can do journals, you can do articles, do them both. You can just do everything. But this kind of gives you a basic intro to the library. And really, we're using three different things, you know, Google Scholar, Amazon, and our library. Please also watch Ryan Sittler's video, and good luck. We're here to help you, and, you know, so you can contact either me, we'll talk about it in class. You can ask Ryan, Dr. Sittler, questions in that discussion board, and I'm sure you'll be successful. Great.